What's up, guys? Jay Lee here. Got another Northwest podcast for you today. I wanted to talk about the Puff Daddy situation. There's a lot to really unpack here. Obviously, I don't know all the details, everything that goes into that. I just know there's a lot of real sordid, messed up stuff that he's being accused and he's allegedly done, which sounds like it's gone on for the last couple decades at least. I know he came out, I think, in the early to mid 90s, maybe 93, 94, around there, when he really started to get famous and get rich and all that. I think there's a lot to say about it. I think it's sad on the one hand. I'd recommend everybody to go listen to Gene Deal, his I think his newest one, where he's talking about where he just heard that Diddy got arrested, Puff Daddy got arrested. I think it was a couple days ago. It's a tough thing to talk about because it's a cautionary tale, but it's also so close to home because that was my era, the 90s. Growing up in the 90s, I was a teenager in the 90s, so I had his albums. I had Notorious B.I.G. Life After Death. I had the Puff Daddy Forever album. I listened to all kinds of songs that he produced, from Nas to the Lox, or I think he might have done some work with DMX. I had a lot of DMX albums. I'm not 100% sure if he produced a lot of DMX stuff, but he was around and he was doing a lot of stuff and he had his hand in a lot of stuff, and his influence is major in the hip hop culture, which is what I grew up in. As I became an adult and as I really matured, I learned that a lot of that culture is very, very toxic. I learned that a lot of that music is very, very toxic. I could relate a lot because I have a half brother who's mixed, and he kind of got me into hip hop in the early 90s, and then I could relate because I suffered a lot as a kid because my dad left, my parents separated, things like that. So I could relate with a lot of their struggle songs. And then I also just liked it. I liked the way that it sounded. So I was one of those kids in the 90s that you would call a wigger. I used to wear FUBU in 9th grade, which was really stupid, but I think I wore it for a whole year. And then I wore it for a year that I was in this like kind of middle class school. And then I switched to like a more poor school, which had a lot more black people, and then I stopped wearing it. I'm not sure if that's just a coincidence, but I think I grew out of it actually at the same time. So I think it is kind of a coincidence, but it's just interesting. But I did go to a school that was like you would consider probably quote unquote more of a black school. And I was on the high school basketball team, but at that time it was cool to be into hip hop. Like it was the fad, it was the genre back then. The 90s was a pretty cool decade in a lot of ways. But the 90s was the first decade where like that being cool kind of came in. People might say the 80s, yeah, but it was a different style of hip hop. It was more conscious. It was more like b-boy dancing kind of thing. Whereas the 90s, it was more like rugged. It was more like, it became more solidified, I think, as a culture. And it became more mainstream. Particularly with like Eminem came along. That was like, when rap and hip hop really became like a household name, where it was like acceptable, like, for some reason, and it's messed up at the same time too, because I always, I talk about this a lot, but I talk about this sometimes, but there's a lot of things that are like really subtly satanic, and rap and hip hop is definitely one of them, like for sure, just majorly, because on the one hand, like it's all about oh, the beat and the rhythm and the talent and the skills and the sound. How does it sound sonically, the flavor and the soul. And yeah, those things are all real and those things all go into it. But when you listen to the lyrics and you listen to the lifestyle that promotes, it's really bad, man. It's really negative. I did a whole video on Eminem the other day, not the other day, but like a month ago or something like that, where I just talk about how like it's all occult stuff. It's all, OCCULT occult. It really is, man. And you can Google this. I learned about this, I think, like in the around 2010 era, around that time, 2009, 2010. There was a secret meeting in hip hop, and you can Google it. It's called the secret meeting that changed hip hop forever. Because if you look at like the 1980s and the difference between the 1980s and the 1990s when it comes to hip hop and rap, it's totally different. Because the 1980s was all about conscious rap. It was all about hip hop, positive vibes. That's what hip hop was, positive vibes, lyricism, wordplay, but like good. They were saying good stuff. They were saying stuff that was knowledgeable, trying to build up the community, stuff like that. And you could say what you want. It's probably alphabet guys infiltrated, COINTELPRO, and they said, look, we don't want positive messages going to the hood. We're trying to hook up with, these private prisons. We're trying to put out this gangster rap. And then all of a sudden it switched when like NWA came along, and then like, just gangster rap became popular. That whole era between like 91 to like 1993 was the shift. From like early 80s, like 83, 80, 45 to like 1990, it was all about conscious rap, hip hop, fun rap, blah, 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 right? And then the early 1990s came along, and then it shifted. It was all about gangster rap. And then everybody wanted to be a gangster rapper. Everybody wanted to listen to gangster rap because it was hardcore and it was cool. And there was something just more appealing about it. It's weird, and I think that's just Satan. I really do, because the Bible says that Satan he was the leading cherub, which is an angel in heaven, and he was the choir director, meaning he was the music director, right? So think about that for a second, right? What's so influencing? Music. Music is extremely influencing. Not only just the lyrics and the subliminal messaging with repeated phraseology, repeated choruses, which is neuro-linguistic programming, right? First of all, it's also the frequency that the music is played at. Influences people. It influences your DNA. It influences the way your cells. I'm pretty sure it influences the way your cells, how healthy the cells in your body is. Google it. There's a great book called, what's it called? I think it's called The Hidden Messages in Water. It's written by a Japanese guy. It's called The Hidden Messages in Water, and he did all these experiments where he would put a word like love or another word like hate, and he would put it I think either over or under like a glass of water, and then he would put the water under a microscope and measure how the cells in the water, whatever the structure of the water, DNA or whatever it's called, the biology of the water structures how we have cells and they look like stuff. Well, the water, water does too. So he would put these words over or under a glass of water, love or hate, and then like he would notice that there was a drastic difference between the healthiness of the water, the water cells between like those different words. So if he put love there, it would be all like beautiful, and like the cells were like, they would look like they're growing, or they're like, displayed out like it's all healthy, and then under the one that says hate, it'd be all like decrepit and like dying, and the cells were all split up and stuff. I believe in that, man, because even the Bible talks about it, but the power of positivity is real. Like if you say positive things to people, if you say things that are full of life and love, you speak life and you speak positivity, and that person will be healthy and happy. Or if you speak death to that person, if you say bad things, or you're no good, that person will be extremely dysfunctional, toxic, our words have power in them, man, and this translates to rap and hip hop. Absolutely, I know because I used to listen to that negative crap. I used to listen to that stuff all the time, all day. It would influence me. It was my culture. It was what I'd wake up and listen to it. I'd listen to it before I went to bed, and I was so depressed. My mind was just disgruntled. It was just and like, I'm not saying I don't still listen to hip hop and rap. I do, but I listen to certain select stuff, and it's still not great. A lot of the messages that I listen to, a lot of the stuff, but it's just kind of curated to where like I know what it is and I like it, but I know it's still not healthy for me, which is kind of messed up. So really, I would say that's one of the biggest things in my life that actually influenced me was really listening to a lot of rap and hip hop. Now I still listen to it, but I like to listen to classical music when I'm driving. Love that. Only listen to classical music when I'm driving. Sometimes I'll take my cell phone and listen to some hip hop if I'm feeling like a certain type of mood, but I really only like to listen to classical music when I'm driving because it's relaxing, man, and it's healthy. It really is so healthy. Classical music is so awesome. I love it. If you got a classical channel on your local radio, listen to it. I mean, unless you just hate that type of music, but I like jam rock. I like reggae. Love Damian Marley. Burning Spear. Bob Marley, of course. I like music that really doesn't need a whole lot of vocals necessarily. I mean, I like all kinds of music. I've always been really into music. But now I'll listen to like a lot of lo-fi. What's this guy's name? Leprezi. A lot of like kind of like hip hop style mixed just beats and really relaxing stuff. Or I'll listen to like Indian flute music or like stuff like that, or like healing frequency music and stuff, and it's made a big difference in my life and my mental health, stuff like that. But yeah, I grew up on Puff Daddy. Not like he wasn't my favorite artist. I liked his production. I think he's a great producer as far as making hits and things like that. He made a lot of, I don't want to get into all the songs, but he made a lot of big hits in the 90s. I mean, that's how he got famous, right? He discovered Notorious B.I.G., made his best albums. He founded Bad Boy Records. So it's a cautionary tale, but I also think that it's an interesting thing because he's so much a fabric of what America was, and maybe it still is in some ways. As far as the hip hop culture is concerned, and just that whole African American experience in the 90s and the 2000s, and even which influences up to today. But it's a cautionary thing, and it's sad because if you look at the lifestyle that promoted that gangster rap and hip hop, and I know Puff Daddy's music wasn't strictly gangster rap. Like I know Biggie, Puff Daddy didn't produce a lot of like gang members. Biggie wasn't really in a gang, but these guys were around messed up, quote unquote gangster type stuff in New York. There's not like Bloods and Crips in New York or whatever. When we think of gangster rap, that's what we think of, like stuff that's really influenced by gang neighborhoods and stuff like that, which that's what gangster rap is. It's affiliated with that. It's around that stuff. But, and I think I talked about this a lot on the other thing I was on my thing about Eminem, about how the Bloods and the Crips were actually founded and stuff. I mean, gangsters, what is a gangster? A gangster is just someone who runs in a gang and commits crimes, right? It doesn't have to be Bloods and Crips. It doesn't have to be, so there's a lot of New York gangsters that just were, 50 Cent came from that or whatever. But it's crazy how, like, for some reason, and it's weird to me because, like, it's just because the music sounds good. So that's the reason why Americans have accepted it and uplifted it and like made these people famous, is because the music sounds good. If the music didn't sound good, nobody would care, and in fact they'd be like, ugh, get that away from me, like that gangster crap, ugh, you know, because some of it doesn't sound very good. Some of it's just like, you know, it's not that it's bad per se, it's just it's not appealing to mainstream masses, right? But then there's some gangster rap that really is, like people like, again, like 50 Cent, or somebody like Nipsey Hussle came out and made a lot of mass appealing songs. And then what's weird is that we idolize these people, and we want to like make statues of them, and it's just so bizarre, because it's like, well, hold on a minute, what are these guys rapping? You know, like even Tupac said it. Tupac, who was mixed up in gang life and eventually got him killed. He got his life taken because of that, but because of his affiliation with like Suge Knight, and you know, they were affiliated with the Bloods and whatever over there in LA or whatever. But and then of course, you know, well, actually it kind of got him caught up, but actually people say that Puff Daddy is the one who put the hit out on Tupac, which is what Keefe D, who's now, I think, he's under a criminal investigation, or he's in jail and he's going to trial or whatever. He's saying that he's been saying for a long time that Puff Daddy put that hit out on Tupac, because of their East Coast West Coast beef and Suge Knight, the beef with Suge Knight, etc. But that's just, it's a tale as old as time, as far as if you come from the 90s. Like, we all have known about that stuff for so long, and it's crazy that it's all coming out now. It's all coming to a head now, you know, in a sense. And it's very sad. It's messed up. But even Tupac said, who again was into the occult, who was into the the duality aspect of the occult, which is the black and white checkerboard stuff, which is, again, all these record executives, they're all into the Illuminati, they're all into the occult stuff, they're all deep in that world, and they're all deeply affiliated, and that's why they only put out certain types of music that's damaging to people. And there's a guy named John Todd who I discovered a long time ago as well. He's an ex-Satanist, and I think you can still find him on YouTube, John Todd, Todd. He was an ex-Satanist who exposes the music industry, how they used to do, and they probably still do, seances. Not sure if that's the right word. I'm not sure what a seance is, but it's like they would do these rituals before they put out albums, before they put out, like, you know, they used to have like Def Leppard or Megadeth, Pantera, Metallica, and all this stuff, and like, and that stuff is real. And I think Aleister Crowley was into that. It's basically witchcraft, you know, the occult witchcraft. They cast spells over music before they put it out, and this is why they say if you play certain records backwards, you will, you know, you'll hear some pretty creepy stuff. Not to say you should try to do that, but there's just a lot of death and darkness. I mean, I grew up on like Bone Thugs and Harmony. It was all about death, and they had skulls and stuff, and they talked about Ouija boards. They have a song called Ouija Boards where they're literally chanting to a Ouija board, which is, you know, you're messing with witchcraft with that. You're messing with demons and stuff. You're messing with, like, what's the word, dark spiritual forces, which you don't want to play with, man. You don't want to play with that whole world. Witchcraft is an abomination in the Bible. Witchcraft is something that God hates. He abhors witchcraft, because you're just contacting demons. You're contacting fallen angels. And the Bible really tells us clearly that fallen angels and demons, they're out there influencing people, and they influence through the music. Again, Satan was the choir director. He was the music director in heaven, so he's got that talent. When I listen to some songs, I'm just like blown away at how good they are. But then at the same time, you listen to the lyrics. And so this is why I was talking about Tupac, because what Tupac said was, don't just bob your head to the beat. Listen to the lyrics. Listen to what these people are actually saying. Don't judge somebody based on how the song sounds. Judge it based on the lyrics and what they're portraying. And this is why I say somebody like Taylor Swift, or even Jennifer Lopez, Britney Spears, Beyonce. These women are into witchcraft. and listen, not only because you can Google it and you can find out that they're actually doing this stuff on stage, these witchcraft rituals on stage, but also if you listen to their lyrics, what are they talking about? Talking about being a narcissist, talking about sleeping around, talking about jumping from guy to guy, talking about being all powerful over men and stuff, which is witchcraft. It's seriously is part of feminism, is part and parcel with witchcraft, because it destabilizes the order that God implemented, which is that the man is the head of the household, the woman is under the man, and the children are under the man and the woman. Now I'm a little bit more liberal than that myself, in the sense that I'm certainly not the type of guy to like, and I know probably a lot of people get down on me on this because they're like, how could you be anti-feminist if you're not this type of guy? But I don't like to prop myself up as like the head of any household or anything like that. And maybe that's why I'm not married, or maybe that has a lot to do with that. I don't know, man. But it's not very appealing to me. But as far as the Bible is concerned, and as far as God's order, I have to just say that's what it is. And you could hate God, or you could disagree with that, or whatever, I'm sure the feminists do, but that's just the way he the natural order of the universe. There's certain orders in the universe that God implemented, and what Satan wants to do is he wants to come along and disrupt that, which is why I say feminism is one of the most evil things. But at the same time, there's nuance as far as myself is concerned, because like I said, I don't want to rule over any woman, it's not, and maybe I'm just taking it too far. Maybe it's not that you do rule over a woman or whatever, but God made the man the head of the household. I'm not married, so I'm not a head of a household, so I'm not, I'm just beholden to myself, so I'm not, that's not my forte, at least as of yet, in my few decades on this earth. But I will admit that objectively speaking, yeah, that's the way God created it, right? So this is the type of music that's being put out there. You've got the elements of drugs and alcohol use. You've got the elements of gang life, the glorifying of gang life. You've got the elements of crime, prostitution, pimping, murder, everything in these songs. I mean, if that's not Satan, what is? I mean, if that's not just the most darkest stuff. And what's crazy is that people will worship these people. If you go on like social media and you go to these pages where they're like, hip hop pages or whatever, they're worshiping these artists. And I used to do it too. I used to like uplift, and if I'm getting caught up and I'm listening to a lot, I'll do it too. It's like, oh man, he's so talented, because these people are amazingly talented. If you look at somebody like Mozart or Bach, or just somebody who's incredibly talented musically, who's like timeless. There are people out there in our day and age today, there are rappers out there who are that good. They're that quote unquote genius. And so it makes sense that people would in a sense, like worship them or put them on a pedestal. In a sense that makes sense. But at the same time, like, I always look at it like, it doesn't make sense to me personally, because I know, because I can see the forest for the trees, because I see through what this is. Now if you listen to like classical music, it's pretty darn vanilla. It's pretty darn, there's really not much in there. There's really nothing in there that you could, that will incite your lust, that will cause you to be angry, that will cause you to like be influenced to think you want to join a gang, or be a gangster, or be a thug, or like, yeah, I need to, because I think that's one of the appeals of the gangster music, is it's tough, is it's hardcore, like, well, this guy's not taking any crap, he's not a pushover, he's not a pussy, in like the 90s, that was kind of a big thing, like, don't be a pussy, like, be a cool guy, be a thug, it's almost like, and so that like translated into like being a thug, where like thugs were like, they weren't going to take anyone's crap. I think in my dad's day, that's what like the movies portrayed cowboys as. Cowboys were guys who didn't take anyone's shit. They were guys who were like, tough guys, and they'd fight you if you said something. This is, you go watch those old movies, back in the 50s and 60s, and like there's all these like, you know, fights and like, oh, I'm a tough guy, and like, so what I do is I look at that and I'm like, well, what's behind all that? What's behind that image? What's behind that culture push? It's Satan. And what is he trying to do? He's trying to influence people to dress a certain way and to act a certain way and to think a certain way. And how is he doing it? Through subliminal messaging. How is he doing it? Through neuro-linguistic programming, through repetitions of choruses, through certain words and wordplay and songs and certain concepts and ideas. And then also he's just expressing himself through these artists. They probably don't even know it. They're satanic and they don't even know it. He's expressing himself through certain things that they say. You can go and you can break down certain things that they say, and sometimes it's so blatantly satanic that I wonder if they even know what they're doing. You know, they think it's a joke, or they think, oh, it's just wordplay, or it's just a figure of speech, and it's like, no, you're literally blatantly. And in some cases, you know, they're even praising Satan. It's so sick. It's so sick in certain songs. If you know, you know. You know, I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and look for those songs, but they're out there, and it's sick, and it's sad, and it's like, it's no wonder. You know, look at Chicago. Look at the youth, the black youth in Chicago. They're just killing each other. You know, they're just dropping like flies. I hope it's getting better. I don't know, because I think hopefully what might happen is we'll just come out of the culture, because it's so saturated. It's been saturated for 20 plus years, 25 years I think now. Gangster rap has been around, that it's like, what else can you do? You've made every song, you've said every lyric, what else can you do? You know, it's like, now if you want to stand out or be different, make a song about doing the right thing, right? Make a song about being a good person. Make a song about following your conscience. Make a song about helping your neighborhood, or loving your enemy, or loving your people around you, or, you know, like, that's how you stand out now. Because who's making those songs? They used to make those songs in the 70s. You know, it was all, you know, the free love generation. It was all, you know, the hippie movement. It was all about, right? It was all about, oh, love it, come, everybody get together and love someone. You know, they had songs like that. It's like they had tons of songs like that. And then you listen to the lyrics in the 90s, and all of a sudden it's, yeah, I'm a gangster, and I shot my ops, and I'm riding on the set, I'm riding on the other side, and it's just like, it's crazy to me how, like, we uplifted that stuff. We thought that was cool in the 90s. We really did. And I just thank God that I got out of that era alive. And I thank God that, because I was dumb and I was influenced by that stuff. And because, you know, I didn't have a dad. My dad was all messed up. So I was listening to this music like they were talking to me. And I'm a white guy. You know, I'm a white guy in a pretty nice little city, you know, in Eastern Washington, where it's just a nice city, and I thank God it's a nice city. And it had its elements, and I was around those bad elements, unfortunately. But I got out, you know. I got out of that mindset, I should say. Really, I got out of that mindset eventually, after some hardships in my life, and, you know, certain things that I think God arranged in certain environments to sort of change my outlook. But I was angry. I was mad and angry for a long time in my teenage years, because I was listening to this angry rap music, you know. But yeah, Puff Daddy was right there, and he was a influencer. You know, nowadays we have these influencers. Nowadays we have these influencers, and then they call them influencers, right? Well, Puff Daddy was an influencer. He helped shape that culture in the 90s, you know, and you know, a lot of people did, not just him. A lot of rappers, a lot of producers, and apparently, and I'm not saying, like, you know, they're all like him. I'm not saying they're all as bad as him, you know, but to some degree, I think they're all culpable. To some degree, I think that they're responsible for a lot of darkness that they brought into this world, you know. We've all got to be responsible for our behavior. We've all got to be responsible for the things we say and for the things we put out there. I made a bunch of rap music between 2000, I want to say 11 or 12 to about up to about 2019. I made about, I don't know, around 10 albums, just in my bedroom, playing around with free software. Bought myself a decent microphone. I thought I made a lot of good songs. Never got popular. No one really ever heard my music. I tried putting my stuff out there a lot. People listened to it, but it was like not that many. You know, I don't even know how many total views I have. Like, I don't even know. You know, it's out there. I'm not going to say my name or whatever. It doesn't matter because it's just not. I'm not into that anymore. But I don't think I really put out music that was bad. But as I was making that music, a lot of what my conscience was enacted. My conscience was like, hey, you can't say, you have it was like I was cognizant as I was doing that, as I was writing lyrics, I was making songs, I was cognizant that, but then I'm a Christian, right? And I'm raised Christian. I'm raised, my mom raised me to be righteous and things like that. Even though I had hard times with my dad and my parents separating, I still have that church background. I have a Christian background. I grew up reading the Bible. I gave my life to God at 19 and delved into the Bible. Jumped into reading the Bible and walking with God and stuff like that, and my music doesn't really reflect that necessarily, right? I mean, I curse and I had some elements and I'd say some things that was, and as I was doing that, I was checking myself and I was like, man, what am I doing? I'm so embarrassed about making that song. My friends and family heard that song. People that were in my church probably heard some of my songs, and it's just like, it's embarrassing, it's almost like being naked in front of somebody or something. You're just like, dang, I can't believe I said that. I shouldn't have said that. I can't believe I said that in that lyric. It's because you're really bearing your soul in a lot of ways. You're putting yourself out there, I mean, there's different ways to make music. There's different ways to write lyrics. You don't have to bare your soul necessarily, but I just did what I was doing. I just did it how I did it. And, at the end of the day, I like a lot of my songs, but I think I made most of them for me so that I thought they sounded good and I thought I was talented, but I don't think they were palatable for anybody to really, well, I don't know about anybody. I mean, maybe some people might have bought my albums, but it wasn't marketable. I didn't put myself out there in a way that was marketable, and I don't think I had enough talent as well. But the point is that as I was making that stuff, a lot of my conscience was bothering me. I was like, I shouldn't write this. What am I doing? And then a lot of it was just me being a rebel, like, well, I want to do this, or like, this is how I feel, or, And so I really kind of had firsthand experience of what it is to be a rapper, of how it feels when you're writing lyrics, how it feels when you think, oh, I shouldn't write that, or how it feels when, like, you know what, I shouldn't write that, but I'm gonna write it anyways, because I'm mad, and this is how I feel. And it's poetry, man. It's, and sometimes poetry is very visceral, sometimes it's very raw, it's very in your face, which I like that about poetry, but it's a time and place, But the thing about rap and hip hop is that it's like junk food. Everybody likes junk food. We like to eat cake. We like to eat candy bars, right? Because it tastes so amazing in our mouth. But once we assimilate the ingredients into our body, we get unhealthy because it's bad for us. It's terrible for us, So I think it's very similar. I think rap, it's a very similar to that metaphor, because you listen to it and you're like, oh my gosh, this song sounds so amazing. But as you digest it into your heart, your brain, and your soul, it's not good for you, Anyways, I keep going off on these tangents, but Puff Daddy is right in the epicenter of all that. He's putting out this stuff, that is toxic. It's toxic to the community. And this is why I'm always like, if I'm on social media and somebody like, oh yeah, Snoop Dogg is a legend, or like, I can't believe, Snoop Dogg was at the Olympics. I mean, imagine, I mean, this guy put out toxic crap for 20 years, into, 30 years, not 20 years, 30 years. I think I said 20 years earlier. It's 30 years now. In the early 90s into today, it's been 30 years, right? I mean, we've had 30 years of this toxic crap infiltrating our neighborhoods, infiltrating our communities, infiltrating our culture, infiltrating our states and our counties and our country and even the world. And it's crazy because if you listen to it, so much of it is so satanic. And you have to look at it like it's a monumental thing for somebody like Puff Daddy to go to jail because, and it's not because of the lyrics, it's not because of the music he put out, but the music he put out is a reflection of his lifestyle, right? It's a reflection of the darkness that's behind all of that. So to me, Puff Daddy is just like, he's an example of what really goes on behind the scenes in that dark world. And I know it's not everybody, and just because someone puts out an album that's dark doesn't necessarily mean their personal life is that way. But we're living in dark times, man, and we've always lived in dark times, right? And some could argue that we're actually living in the best times ever, and that the fact that we're able to recognize this darkness just shows how actually privileged and good we do have it compared to other eras. Because in other eras, like, it's not just about influence. In other eras, it's about literally survival. There's literally people out here from another tribe or from another country trying to go to war with you and murder you and kill all your townspeople or whatever. And I mean, history's messed up. You could just be like, you could extrapolate to that extent and just be like, well, we're probably living in the best time because all we got to deal with now is negative rap lyrics. We're living in a pretty peachy time then, because they used to be worried about somebody coming in the middle of the night and killing them, So it's like, anyways, man. But the point is that it's just such a crazy juxtaposition when you look at, we do have a good country, and it speaks to how great our country is and how peaceful it really is, relatively, right? How relatively peaceful it really is. That really our biggest worry is that we got these negative lyrics affecting our kids, or affecting the young people, right? I mean, that's a pretty good thing to be worried about, as opposed to like worried about dying of something very imminently because it's at your doorstep, whether it's an invading army or whether it's a disease or whether it's hunger or what, all the stuff that they used to. So we're pretty lucky in that sense, right? I mean, history is beautiful, so we always got to keep things in perspective. But again, this stuff was in our streets, was in our homes. I mean, imagine the parents. Imagine if you're a righteous, right from wrong, you have a moral compass, you're trying to raise your kids right, and then they bring in this CD that's glorifying pimping women or glorifying murder or glorifying gang life, glorifying drugs and alcohol. Like, that's what all the albums were about, man, all the hip-hop albums. And I would say hip-hop was the worst genre out of all of them. You could argue and say, like, oh, no, there's death metal and this, that. Maybe that stuff's pretty bad because we're talking about frequencies and we're talking about neurolinguistic programming, things like that. But the lyrics, see, the thing about hip-hop, the reason why it's so different is because the lyrics, it's you have to have lyrics. You have to have 2 or 3 verses on a song with 2 or 3 choruses, right? That is saying something. You have to say something. The song has to say something, which is what I found was the hardest part of being a rap artist, was saying something, right? You have to have something to say that's interesting and catchy and keeps people's attention and wows them. And it's not just wordplay or lyrics, it's what are you actually saying. You have to say something. You have to make a point. You have to say something about yourself, or say something about the world, or entertain, or educate. And that's why on the one hand, it's such a powerful tool. On the other hand, it can be such a damaging tool, because when you pack into those 3 verses, 2 or 3 verses, all this negative crap, negative imagery, well, you're just blending up a cocktail of death and darkness, and Satan's behind it. I mean, think about that. So this is what Puff Daddy, the environment that he comes out of. Now, not only that, as we know, if you study his history, he comes from the streets. His dad was a gangster. His dad was, I think, murdered by some gangsters. And so he comes from that life in New York, and that transferred over, and it also was at the right time where he was hitting that early 90s secret meeting that changed hip hop forever, that implemented that gangster rap stuff. And it's poison. It's poison. And they did it to, again, you can Google that. They did it to pad the prisons with slaves, because what happens when young people are influenced to do crime? They get arrested. What happens when they get arrested? They go to jail. What happens when they go to jail? They're put to work. So there you go. So it's big business to create conspiracies like that. It's big business to, and conspiracies have been happening since the beginning of time. People act like, oh no, these things are just, everything's just hunky-dory in the world. Like, there's no one out there who's out to any nefarious plots or schemes. Like, this is what I think a lot of the sheltered, living in a bubble, middle-class American thinks, is that nothing's out to get him. And he doesn't realize, well, it's in your food, it's in your water, it's in the music that you listen to, it's in the environment and the air that you breathe. There's nefarious stuff that's trying to harm you all over, right? But you can imagine if you're a parent and your kid brings in this music, and all of a sudden he's talking black, and he's talking gangster, and he's wearing earrings, and he's sagging his pants, and this, that, and the third, and you're just like, what's going on with my son? What's going on with my child, or your daughter, whatever? And this is why, like, my mom, I mean, I'm thankful that she did what she did, and she didn't succeed because ultimately I won, because I got a TV, and I got these albums, and I got a CD player, and I got the boom box, and I got the speaker system, and I was listening to all this stuff, in the 90s, and I was dressing that way. So I eventually won, but she tried to fight that stuff. She wouldn't allow me to have a TV. We never had cable growing up, which I'm now thankful for. She got me these nice movies because she knew that I wanted to watch stuff, and she knew I liked TV when I was, like 4, 5, 6, 7. I would watch stuff back in the 80s, reruns of stuff and cartoons. She knew I liked that stuff, so she went to the movie store, and she kind of, I don't know if she sensed it or whatever, but maybe it was a coincidence, or maybe it was just God, but I've always been the type, I love movies. Like, I like watching stuff. I like not so much now as I used to when I was younger, but I still like a good movie now, but because they don't really make good movies that much anymore. But she just sensed it, and she went and she got all these really nice quality movies that were like G-rated, that had a really good premise, a really good story, and she recorded them from the VHS to our Betamax. We had a Betamax in the 80s. If you know what that is, you know what that is. And she recorded them for me, and she put them on there, and I had like 40 or 50 little cool movies, and there was kids movies, but also grown up movies, a couple Disney movies, and they were really nice, and they had good premises, and it really helped shape my character. Now later on in the 90s, I started watching like Young Guns, Tombstone, all the Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Predator, and all these movies where people getting killed, and it's R-rated movies. And then in the 90s, there's a sex scene in every movie, which is just Satan, charging people up to watch porn. And then porn came out in the 2000s on the computer, and then it's just That's all she wrote. I mean, this is how a society gets corrupted, is through these elements, and they wanted to keep those elements out. Porn used to be illegal. They didn't make movies that were gory and messed up back in the 1950s and 60s. I mean, they kind of did occasionally, but not really that much. Then in the 90s, it was just like every movie was gory. Every movie. I mean, they had some great movies in the 90s for sure. Don't get me wrong, but there's just so much darkness. It seemed like, the darkness just got ramped up in the 90s and the 2000s, and here we are today, where it's just, I don't know, man. I don't know. I hope we're in a shift to where where we can shift back to like wholesome values. It seems like that's possible. It seems like that's possible because I feel like people are. I think maybe what's happening, and I'm not sure, but maybe what's happened is we hit an apex, right? 'Cause I personally, I think like 2010 to 2015 was maybe the darkest period of our American culture. I mean, America's only been here a couple hundred years. I mean, of course, it was extremely dark, before the, the 1920s or whatever, slavery, I mean, obviously that's very dark, but if we're talking about culture, we're talking about mainstream, once, after the Industrial Revolution, after, people started getting workers' rights, the unions, and then people started having nice homes and nice lives and nice families. It was like that for a long time. I mean, if you lived in that, you could make a really nice life for yourself in America between then let's say the 1930s. I know the Great Depression was in the early 1930s, but you could make a good life if you had the right job, and you got lucky or whatever. You could make a really nice life for yourself between say 1940s, 50s up to say the 1980s or 1990s, and then things started to come in differently. They started to try to rot from the inside out, where like, okay, I can't reach you from these outward things. I'm going to try to reach you from the inward things. I'm going to try to come into your home through books, or I'm going to try to come into your home through movies or music. And this is what you see, because if you go back, I'm just telling you, man, if you go back and you listen to like, let's say 1960s music, I mean, it's so vanilla, it's so nice, it's so lovey. Even 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s music is so it's all about love. It's all about very few. Sure, you had your Elvis Presleys and you had your certain people who had elements of like, drinking or partying or whatever, a little bit, but it was just, even that was very vanilla. It was all about having fun, all about love. Maybe you have some songs about carousing with girls or whatever, but until the 1980s, and then you had this rock music that came out that was really, pretty suggestive. And then rap came along, and then pop music came along, and then if you listen to R&B, how horrible R&B is now today, and it's just disgusting. So maybe what's happening is that people are just getting sick of it. They're like, you know what? I just want something nice to listen to. I don't want to hear about how sexual you are, or how hood you are, or how many guns you have. I don't want to hear about none of that. I don't care about any of that crap. I just want to listen to something nice. And maybe I'm just getting old. Maybe I'm getting older now. And I grew up in the 90s. I heard all that stuff. I've heard it all. I've heard all the new stuff. I'm not a fan of much of anything anymore. I can appreciate genius talent when I hear it. I can appreciate a genius talented rap song when I hear it, but I'm not going to dwell on it. And like I said, I have certain ones that I listen to on occasion when I'm working out, or when I want to have a certain mood where I'm battling something, depression or whatever. There's certain go-to songs that I listen to, but it's not what I used to listen to, in the 90s, because I just thought, oh yeah, I thought being hood was cool. I thought being a gangster was like, that was like being a cowboy, or that was like being super, respected or something. It's just so not. and it's funny. I'm thankful that I grew out of that. I'm thankful. I hope so. I mean, there might be some shades of it in me still, but I need God, man. Honestly, I just need God to transform me and to keep me on the straight and narrow, and I just want to listen to nice music. I just want to like I like lo-fi beats, nice beats, and I hope that as a nation, and we would go back into that. If you go back and you listen to what they used to listen to in the 50s and the 60s, it's so nice. A lot of jazzy stuff, a lot of, if you even Elvis, believe it or not, had some really nice Christmas songs. He had some nice, um, they would sing about love a lot. I like what's his name? Jack, is it Jack? The Man in Black, I forgot his name. Johnny Cash, not Jack. Johnny Cash. I like Johnny Cash. I think he's, you know, something about an artist being really unique and being really. You don't have to curse. You don't have to have those. If you're talented enough, you don't have to have that stuff in your music. If you're talented, and that's kind of what I was kind of going for a little bit more as my, as I was as my rapping attempts progressed, is I was trying to go for a little more, like, I wanted to be more like Johnny Cash. I wanted to put out songs that had a lot of substance, had a lot of emotion, made people feel things. I think I just didn't have the talent, or I didn't really take enough time to rap my lyrics correctly. But you need talent, you really do. It's something you're born with, I think, and it's something that you work hard through hard work to create. I do think some people start off seemingly untalented and then they can get better. I think I improved a little bit, but I just felt like, you know what, I don't think this is for me. It's not that I'm bad. I think I'm pretty good at this, and I think some people would really like my songs and see that I have talent. But I don't know if I have enough talent to where I could actually do anything with this, and I don't want to waste my time anymore. I've put out 10 albums, made over, maybe 150 songs or something like that. Maybe it's enough, maybe, okay, maybe I could write better lyrics, maybe I could elicit emotions a little better, but I don't, I just felt like it's probably not going to work, maybe somebody would listen to my stuff and be like, oh man, you shouldn't have quit, you got a lot of talent, or maybe it's just not mainstream enough, or maybe it's just not, I mean, to make it in music is, anyway, I don't even know if that's what God wants for me, but anyway, I think at best it's poetry, at best it can help people through hard times. I think it does, and it can. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, I mean, I think that someone like Puff Daddy's put out some pretty great songs. In the 90s, I remember hearing a lot of great songs produced by him. But it's just sad that and so I don't even look at it like, oh my gosh, look at what Puff Daddy did. I look at it like, well, this is the lifestyle that these people lived. This is the lifestyle that they promoted. This is the lifestyle that was in their lyrics, so it doesn't really surprise me too much. Like, I am surprised. Like, it's very interesting, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this person was such a saint. It's like, no, they, and plus everybody knew he partied. Everybody knew, and there's a lot of rumors. I think in the last 7 years, there's been a lot of rumors that came out and a lot of weird stuff about, so it is what it is. But, what I think is more interesting is the fact that he was a staple of our culture. He, along with like a lot of others whose names I mentioned, but just a lot of, it's interesting that a lot of these people, unfortunately, they're into a lot of dark stuff, and that you got to, I think, to be that from what I've studied, to be that famous, you have to do some dark stuff. You have to be affiliated with some dark stuff, some dark people, some dark circles that really run Hollywood, that really run the music entertainment industry, that really run our country. There's a lot of dark stuff at high levels, and that's just the way that it is. And that's the way, even in the Bible, like, you got Egypt with Pharaoh, you've got the Babylonians and stuff. When man gets together and he creates a society apart from God, you know, a lot of satanic stuff happens. And so many, and I think that this is why we've been blessed as Americans, is we did put God first, one nation under God, right? It's in our Pledge of Allegiance, right? I remember standing up and saying that as a kid in like third and fourth grade. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for, or no, I think I skipped a part. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the flag for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think I got that right. Indivisible, right? Meaning we can't be divided, but yet we are divided. We're divided by parties, right? We're divided by Democrats and Republicans, but that's the occult, the Bloods and the Crips, the blue versus the red, right? That's the occult, the duality, the dichotomy, because people, these Freemasons are the ones who, George Washington was a Freemason, right? I'm pretty sure Thomas Jefferson, these people are Illuminati, and they've been that way, and they're secretly into some satanic stuff, and they really founded our country. But for whatever reason, God had mercy, and God needed God needed America to fulfill his plan of saving millions of people, of carrying out his purpose and his will on this earth. And I don't think any country besides America in the history of the world has done more good for God than America has. I really don't. You could argue maybe England, but I don't know, man. America, because we have religious freedom. That's the whole point. The whole purpose of our country being founded is on these freedoms in the Constitution. And now people, want to say, oh, the Constitution's old. It's just like the reason why we had so much freedom, the reason why we have such a good country is because of the Constitution, is because we just have we have a good foundation, a pretty good. I'm not saying it's the best, I mean, obviously there's a lot of sordid stuff, and it's built upon a lot of really dark stuff like slavery and stuff, but that doesn't mean you throw the whole thing out. We ended slavery, and it was abolished, and it was ratified, and that's now in the Constitution, and that's now in our law system. So anyways, I'm not saying we're perfect, because again, there's dark stuff on the high levels, and whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the music entertainment industry, whether it's Congress or whatever, there's dark elements, there's dark people who are doing dark stuff. I mean, why is abortion legal? Why are you able to kill babies? Why are all the stuff they're doing with the drug companies, all the stuff they're doing with the food? It's all dark. It's not totally corrupted, but we still have this foundation that's good. So it's just like a lot of it is just the people. Now the people have a choice. It's like when you have freedom, responsibility comes with that. A choice comes with that. I can choose to go buy this rap album and put garbage in my head for the next 2 hours, and listen to this repetitively for weeks and months, and then it's the next album, listen to that repetitively. I can choose to poison myself like that. You can choose to go to the store and buy ice cream and cakes and cookies and poison yourself, and there's going to be a result. You're going to get fat, or you're going to have a bad temper, or you're going to have a bad outlook on life, or you're going to be negative, or you're going to be angry, or you're going to whatever. You're going to have a bad vibe about you if you put it, it's the same, what we put in our ears, what we put in our head and our soul is the same thing like we put in our body. You put junk and toxins in your body, you're going to have a expression of that in your body, right? So it's the same concept. What does the Bible say? It says, be careful what you eat. God cares about what you eat, right? What's the first thing he did when he created man? In Genesis chapter 3, he put Adam and Eve in front of the 2 trees. So you can eat of this tree or you can eat of that tree. I'm giving you a choice. And they ate of the wrong tree, and what was the result? The result was death. So that's a big metaphor for everything. It's a big metaphor, and I think the concept still is active today. We can still eat God today. We can read the Bible. We can pray. We can choose to be righteous. We can walk righteously, in our daily life. We can live righteously. We can behave righteously like the Bible says, and follow God and pray and things like that. And that's what our country used to do. That's why the 1950s, 60s, all that was so blessed. And I'm not saying it was perfect. Sure, you could make arguments that it was racist, or it was misogynistic, or it was chauvinist, or this, that, and the third, whatever. But for the most part, people did put God first. And I'm not saying they were perfect in doing that. I'm not saying it might have been their religiosity, maybe, but at least they did it. Whereas now people are like, God, screw God, it's all about science, or it's all about me and my narcissism and what I want, and this, it's just, and this is why people are sick and sad and disjointed, and